Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Abhilash Inumella, CEO of Dreamers and Doers and ex-CEO of Samosa Labs. Abhilash is a graduate of IIIT Hyderabad and has worked for companies such as Google and Facebook before starting his own venture in 2015. Hi Abhilash, welcome to ELI.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Abhilash, I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
So I did my bachelor's in computer science from IIIT Hyderabad. That's where I first learned how to write software, and that was the first time I I got hands on coding and what exactly happens with the computer. And then after graduation, I did an e-learning startup way back in 2009. That startup didn't go anywhere. And then me and my co-founder at that point in time decided we will move to Silicon Valley. And we applied to like 30 companies and we got offers from two, three companies. I joined Facebook and he joined another gaming company. We saw what was happening there. We saw the kind of focus companies in Silicon Valley have in Indian market and the kind of investments they were making in Indian market and the kind of growth they were seeing in Indian market. So while going itself, I decided I would start up again and I would come back to India again. So I came back after a few years and then I started doing a lot of experiments. And we launched a short audio sharing app on WhatsApp. So it is sort of an app that lets you share romantic one-liners, etc. on WhatsApp. That app sort of went viral, and that's how our journey got the initial push. And we were training in top 10 entertainment apps at that time in 2015. And then we raised some funds. Sequoia Capital reached out to us. Uh, at that time, predominantly things were still in 2G. Video wasn't a craze as it is right now. So when Geo happened, we switched to video. We saw another 10x growth, and uh, yeah, that's our journey, previous journey of Samosa.
Okay, we'll get into the products you have built, but first question that comes to my mind: what are the things you have seen that differs in Indian startup ecosystem from the Bay Area you have worked in?
What are the things that differ in Indian startup ecosystem compared to Bay Area? So in Bay Area, I had first-hand exposure only to a few companies. So I had exposure to Facebook where I work, and then I had exposure to like five, six other companies where my friends were working. So my experience exposure uh, compared to those companies versus what I have seen in India. Like even in India, I haven't worked at a lot of startups, or I have seen a lot of startups. The only companies I am exposed to in India are also my company and maybe like four, five other companies that my friends are running or my friends are operating. And most of these people have some exposure of working at these companies like Google, Facebook, etc. So a lot of good things that they have in terms of their product road mapping, engineering practices. Those are now becoming much more common, right? Like much more common practice. So in terms of work, I think in terms of adopting those sort of practices, this company, like the companies here, may be slightly late, but quickly catching up to whatever is over there. I think in terms of culture, the kind of problems that Indian market has are very different compared to the kind of problems that a US market has. So the kind of weeks that need to be done or the kind of tactics that need to be adopted for these markets obviously tend to be different. The kind of team structures, cultures here are slightly different. So yeah, so those in terms of tech engineering standpoint, mostly same. In terms of marketing, in terms of the product growth hacks, etc., that are deployed, they're largely different because they're much more based on what needs to be done in that point in time and for that particular market.
Okay. Um, Now coming to the problems you have tried to solve. So through your venture, tell us what are the different problem statements you have been trying to solve for our society.
So we set out to build a vernacular social network. So very much like we were essentially competing with TikTok, and we had almost 1 million daily active users in Tamil and Telugu markets. So the problem the TikTok solves for creators is it sort of democratizes the field, right? Like YouTube for a new creator to break out, it's almost impossible now. But on TikTok, a new creator can break out of nowhere because if the content is good, TikTok makes them a star. But in YouTube, the content has to be good, and then you have to consistently produce content, and then you have to produce 4,000 hours of content, and then there is probably a likelihood of something happening. So there is a democratization that is a problem, big problem, because the social networks are getting more and more saturated for new creators. So that was a problem we set out to solve, and like at one point, we decided it doesn't make sense anymore to compete with TikTok because they were a much better product and they were burning like a lot of money. They were burning almost $1 million every day in the market, and we had raised about $8.3 million. And for these sort of social networks, it's absolutely critical to get to a critical mass. Only if you get to that critical mass, it makes sense. Because only after that tipping point, whenever a new creator comes to a platform, he would fly. He would take off. Yes, so that was a problem we tried to solve with Samosa. Now at Dreamers and Doers, we're doing quite a few experiments. The latest experiment is a very simple tool, a simple camera-based tool that lets you scan. Let's say you are in a grocery shop and you are trying to buy something. It lets you scan the barcode of the product and it tells you is it healthy or not. As simple as that. So like all these products have nutrition information, ingredient information, but they don't tell us whether I still have to decipher, I still have to use a lot of my own thinking to figure out. It's not easily readable. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to give a 0 to 100 rating. So as soon as you scan a barcode, it tells you it's at 0, it is not healthy. This is at 9, this is healthy. So we do that based on a nutrition value of the product and so on. So this is the latest product that we are launching. So essentially, like over there, in Samosa's case, we were trying to give a platform for creators. Now we are trying to let people make healthy choices.
Okay. Abhilash, let me ask you, uh, when did you think of becoming an entrepreneur? I believe you were working with good companies who were good paymasters as well. Why did you leave your job and start on your own?
When did I decide to become an entrepreneur? Look, at IIIT Hyderabad, there was a lot of research focus. And then I joined as an undergrad, bachelor's in computer science, and then I took a dual degree. The dual degree means what that means is a master's based course where you have to write thesis, you have to publish a few papers, and so on. So in those 2 years, what I ended up realizing was I am not uh, as much a researchy person. Like in research, you have to do something and then you have to, like the cycle of experimentation is very, very, very long. You don't get very quick, immediate feedback. Um, Whereas I wanted to be in a setting or a setup where there is much more quick feedback cycle, much quicker experimentation cycle. So I thought entrepreneurship is one such thing. In research, like you're on the bottom of things, whereas in entrepreneurship, like you're on the top of things because you have to be, otherwise, what you're doing may not resonate with the customers. What you're so this is like I also have a very sports background, so I played for my university badminton team, football team, and so on. So I like that sort of a mode where you're on top of things. You are in like sport, it gets decided in the moment. It's not like you should wait for 6 months or 1 year to wait for your research experiment results. So as a person, that's what drove me to entrepreneurship because it felt like it is the uh, it is one area where I can experiment in a way I wanted.
Okay. Now, I would like to know what are the challenges you have faced along the way while building and growing your ventures.
Challenges, I think there are various sorts of challenges, right? Like there are, well, let's take the example of samosa, right? Like, in samosa's case, we were a small team and we were trying to build this whole company ground up. And I was trying to build a team very first time. And when you're trying to build a team very first time, so when you're putting together that sort of a team, you have to be really cognizant about who you're hiring. There were a lot of hiring mistakes that we had made, and then when you make certain hiring mistakes, it trickles down, and then if you don't correct them soon enough, uh, then you'll miss out some market opportunities because the team isn't on top of things and performing. Yeah, so there were some challenges, team building, that I had to get around. And I'll give you one concrete example. Like when Geo happened, we didn't launch video immediately. We launched after 12 to 16 months after Geo had happened. So, uh, like there were a lot of things that were happening internally also at the company at the time. So if some of those things weren't happening, we would have launched our video product much sooner. So just to give you one example. So challenge as such, uh, and I think like the main challenges are the things, the biases you have yourself personally, right? About team building, about company building, etc.
Okay, Avila, since you told a few things about recruitment, I would like to ask you, having learned some lessons of good hiring and bad hiring yourself, how would you recommend a startup founder to recruit people? What kind of people should someone recruit into a startup?
What kind of build people are best suited for startups? So, like the first three people that I had hired at Samosa, all three of them went to start their own companies right now. And those people are well, like ultra motivated. And I think I think the people who are best suited at an early stage startup during the first 6 to 12 months are those people who eventually want to start their own companies because they quickly want to learn. They quickly want to, and I was pretty open, like I was telling them what was happening, how the investors think, and so on. So it was a great learning opportunity for them also. And I'm really proud that they went on to start three companies on their own, and one of them even raised huge round of funding. So it's, I think the people who are working really hard tend to work for themselves, right? In some sense. So if they're working for themselves and if that has to be also aligned with your company, it's best if they are working for themselves to start a new company because in that way, what you are trying to do and what they are trying to do are completely aligned.
Okay.
Like it's that sort of thing where you don't have to micromanage them. You don't have to tell them do this, do that, because they're already motivated. They're trying to learn. They're trying to assess the metrics. They're trying to set up everything. They're going that I like. I put up like 5%. They put up 15%. And when they put up 15%, like I put up 30%, and then they put up like 60%. So it compounds in that way.
Okay. So, Abhilash, here is my next question to you. What are some of the interesting lessons you have learned so far as an entrepreneur?
Look, I think the biggest lesson I learned is about myself. So I typically do not pay much attention to the emotions of people around me, and that has caused uh, a lot of turmoil while I was running teams. Uh, like take simple example, right? Like let's say somebody disagrees with you, and then you say, uh, "Why the hell do you disagree with me?" Or you say, "Why do you feel that way?" So there are two very different kinds of things. In one case, you're acknowledging the other person's emotion and you're trying to empathize with them. In the other case, you're essentially blurting out by saying, like, "How dare you to do something like that?" So there are these sorts of things where I wasn't paying attention to how others were feeling, and that, like, if I had just paid a little more attention for a few more milliseconds, probably a lot of things could have taken a different uh, direction. So, like, it doesn't mean I won't be straightforward with people and so on. I will be straightforward and give them pointed feedback, but I do it in a much more emphatic manner. So I think that's the biggest lesson I had learned. And also, like, if you're in a sort of a joint family kind of setup, you're typically much more attuned to these sorts of things because of the complex family dynamics and so on. But if you are in a family that is like a nuclear kind of family, the kind of exposure you will have for dealing with these sorts of situations and so on, it's comparatively less. And I grew up in a nuclear sort of family. So it was, and the team dynamics and so on, if you're in a corporate sort of structure, you don't get as much exposed to it, especially at lower rungs of the career. I think in given corporate structure at higher ranks of the thing, there'll be a lot of these dynamics. But yeah, so that is my biggest learning. And of course, the second biggest learning is, I think, uh, making something either uh, people want or you yourself want. So if I'm working on something I do not want for myself, I should at least make sure it is solving a problem for someone who can't solve it for themselves. So it has to be either something I want it myself, or something it has to be something for somebody who can't solve it for them. So these are two like big or fundamental lessons for me.
Okay. Probably my final question to you: how would you suggest our audience to start their journey as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think the kind of problems we have in front of us are huge, and I think there should be more entrepreneurs in this country, and there's a lot of demographics of people that are whose problems are largely ignored or largely unsolved in our country. And I think if there are a lot more entrepreneurs trying to tackle problems for those communities, I think it will be great. Like a lot of entrepreneurship that is happening is sort of very one-dimensional, like majority of it predominantly one-dimensional in the sense all these people go to certain premier colleges like IITs or IITs, and then they have a very Western outlook and so on and so forth. But that's not where India is, right? Like India is not in these gated communities. India is not in these IITs or IITs or whatever. So India is somewhere else, and their aspirations are somewhere else, and their like economic aspirations are somewhere else. So building for these audiences who are very different from these set of people who live in these gated communities, IITs, etc. I think this like there are like two different cultures, and I think because of that divide, a lot of entrepreneurship that should be happening here, it's still not happening. And I think it should happen, like building for middle class and a broad India that is not as much happening as I would like to see. Like in the last 1 year, I probably came across like 2 products that were launched for this section, whereas I came across like 40 products launched for this section.
Okay, interesting. On that note, I would like to close this session. Any final message you want to leave before we end?
I think if people are starting up, they should either build it for themselves or build it for somebody who can't solve it for themselves, and they should be ruthless about validating those assumptions. And I think if they do that, they would save themselves years and years of time and energy, and they would go much further, much faster. I think that's my only suggestion, and I think the opportunity is huge.
Okay. I must tell you that it was a great pleasure to host you at ELI, and our audience would have got lifetime lessons from this video. Thanks for your time, Abhilash, and our best wishes for your venture.
Thank you, man. See you.
Viewers, you can follow and connect with Abhilash on LinkedIn by typing Abhilash Inumella. That is it for today's episode. We'll be back with another exciting entrepreneur. Stay tuned to ELI.